This is an absolute heist for the Toronto Raptors. There's been multiple rumors and minor reports linking the Toronto Raptors to Bradon Ingram over the course of this offseason. Now, a recent trade proposal has been going around Toronto Raptors land, which frankly would be a steal. Masai Ujiri gets this offer. He needs to hit that green button and accept that package. So we're going to break down this trade proposal, why it makes sense for the Toronto Raptors, and frankly, why I changed my gear a little bit from our previous video, because I've spoken out this offseason saying I don't think it makes sense for the Toronto Raptors to go all in on a Bradon Ingram trade over the course of this summer. However, with this specific proposal, with these offer and what the Pelicans kind of market is for their star, this just makes a ton of sense for this Toronto Raptors team to speed up their rebuild, move forward a little bit. So we're going to dive into all of that in this vid. But before we do, folks, again, you guys have been crushing it, hitting that sub button. So if you want to stay up to date with everything happening with the Toronto Raptors team, and now with the Olympics starting up, Team Canada basketball as well, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a single thing this summer. But let's dive into it, because again, I've been outspoken. I already said it, right? I didn't really want to go all in on Bradon Ingram when those rumors started percolating, those started bouncing up, because, again, we can take a look at some of the stuff that's coming out earlier in the offseason. Two teams that have been viewed as possible dark horse destinations for Ingram was the Sacramento Kings and the Toronto Raptors. So that came out from Brett Siegel, and there's been chatter, there's been reports about Bradon Ingram trade coming. Essentially, Mark Stein discussed earlier in the offseason that there's a growing belief league-wide that the Pelicans will aggressively explore the trade market for Bradon Ingram before next season. League sources say Ingram's exit is increasingly viewed by various league sources and observers as an inevitability rather than a possibility. So why is that? Why is that going on? Well, Shams had some basic discussions in regards to this. Basically, another former All-Star entering his final year on his contract has been in the middle of similar trade inquiries. Pelicans forward Bradon Ingram, who both sides have remained open to a future together, but Ingram's desire for a high-priced extension has meant the Pelicans must at least maintain dialogue with him and his representation, whether he stays in New Orleans or moves elsewhere. So Bradon wants to stay here, Pelicans executive vice president David Griffin has said in June, but he believes in what we're building, and that's meaningful to him. So that's meaningful to his agent. At the same time, there is a financial reality to what they have to deal with. So Shams went on to say, multiple teams across the league believe the trade market is currently very limited for Bradon Ingram, as two interested teams, San Antonio and the Sacramento Kings, have offseason moves for forward in terms of DeMar DeRozan and Harrison Barnes respectively. So basically most teams are finalizing their rosters for the summer. So there's been a ton of trade chatter. There's been a ton of discussions about Bradon Ingram, a trade happening. The Raptors have been linked. There's been, lots of stuff going around Toronto Raptors land. And now a trade proposal has been thrown out there by Bleacher Report that, again, this is not an official report, David Griffin, Masai Ujiri on the phones, but this trade proposal, if this is the market, that Shams is sort of alluding into, and that's a new report from Shams in terms of this updated discussion. If this is the report, if this is the asking price for Bradon Ingram, who, again, is one of those all-star caliber players. He's been an all-star, right? Fringe all-star, 21 points, 5 rebounds, 6 assists, 49% from the field, 36% from the three-point line, 26 years old. You just got to run with it. So what is this proposal? Basically, the Toronto Raptors get Bradon Ingram, Jordan Hawkins, and Matt Ryan from the New Orleans Pelicans, and then the Pelicans receive Jakob Poeltl, Bruce Brown, and a 2026 first-round pick from the Indiana Pacers. So, again, losing Poeltl would be big in terms of we'd be lacking very much depleted in the front court. We'd still have Kelly Olynyk. We'd still have Chris Boucher, I guess, could play the center position. Mogba would be an undersized center, but we have some pieces there. I'll talk about Christian Koloko in this video as well, but frankly, if you're getting a guy, right, well, let's take it back to this, right? If you're getting a guy in Bradon Ingram who's 21, 5, and 6 at just 26 years old, that as a basketball player is huge. And again, his contract extension is going to be large, but this is kind of the complementary star around a Scottie Barnes that makes sense. Now, again, I was pretty fired up. I was pretty adamant in discussions about how it just doesn't make sense out of principle to trade Pascal Siakam, who's in your system, who's in your organization, and just because you didn't want to pay him a significant contract, and then to pay a similar level player in in a Bradon Ingram, turn around and sort of make that move happen. And yes, I still stand by that. It's if you're giving up similar value in terms of what's going on, I still sort of hold true onto that front. But The Toronto Raptors got some additional assets. They got Jakob Poeltl, they got that other pick that turned into Abaji and Kelly Olynyk, and then essentially you're giving up, in terms of salary matching, Poeltl, Bruce Brown, as well as that 2026 first overall pick. Again, Bruce Brown's on a 1-year deal. He's more of a contract to facilitate this trade discussions and get stuff going there. And then Poeltl, again, love him as a defender, love him as a guy that can be an impact player for this Toronto Raptors team, but the lack of shooting is a concern with the team with RJ Barrett and Scottie Barnes as your main sort of dynamic duo out there on the wing, and his lack of free throw shooting is an issue during the close of games. So bringing in Bradon Ingram that can slide into that forward position right away, right now to start, is a huge positive. He's solid, in terms of length and stuff. Well, no one would accuse him of being one of the best defenders in the NBA, but definitely shooting-wise, just makes sense as a fit around kind of a Scottie Barnes level player and as a former All-Star and stuff like that. Also in that deal, which makes me more intrigued why I think this goes from, a realistic trade or a reasonable trade both sides to a heist for the Toronto Raptors, even though I get why the Pelicans are doing it money-wise. They have guys on the wings and Herb Jones and Trey Murphy III, who need that starting position, need that starting roles that are cheaper than Bradon Ingram. But basically, Jordan Hawkins being added to this deal would be, supplement that first round pick that's going out. So Jordan Hawkins is a guy that in his rookie season at just 22 years of age, 8 points per game, 2.2 rebounds, 1 assist, shot 37% from the three-point line, and 47% on corner threes. 47% on corner threes. We're essentially getting him added to this deal, right? In terms of just fit, timeline-wise, age, youth, and all that type of stuff, right? He just makes more sense, that rather than a Bruce Brown, even though Bruce Brown's a better player here now at this point in their careers. Jordan Hawkins he was the 14th overall pick. He was selected right after Gradey Dick. And I remember a lot of people last season discussing how Jordan Hawkins would have been a guy that they'd rather select over Gradey Dick because Gradey Dick had a slow start. But if we have, Jakob Poeltl, if we have I keep saying Brandon Miller, but we have Jordan Hawkins and Gradey Dick coming off the bench as sort of those wing scorers, those bucket getters for this team. That is a ton of shooting that the Toronto Raptors have added to this team, to be built around, an RJ Barrett, Scottie Barnes to be supplemented inside of that group. So again, him being added to this trade package makes this kind of a heist, in my opinion, for this deal. Again, the Pelicans just are loaded on the wings, so not going to get a ton of development down there with New Orleans. So coming into the Toronto Raptors that are looking to have these types of guys, looking to have these types of players, into the mix for this roster, that is something that is very exciting, very, a very intriguing trade package on my eyes, in terms of a deal that's going on. Yes, I'm a firm believer that this Raptors team would be good with Immanuel Quickley, RJ Barrett, Scottie Barnes, Pascal Siakam, and that Poeltl at center, whatever you're sort of rolling with. And so I was disappointed in the Pascal Siakam trade. I like that we got draft picks. I'm encouraged by Jakob Poeltl. The hope was to land our draft pick for this season, yada, yada, yada. I'm still disappointed in the Pascal Siakam trade. But you get that star player back, and then you kind of maximize assets. You get some asset growth. Some people would argue Bradon Ingram is a better fit around Scottie Barnes, RJ Barrett-led team, just with his jump shooting ability on that front. So I get those arguments there. Would definitely make sense in terms of a deal if it could go down. Again, I don't think this trade is going to happen immediately. I don't think this is a trade that's going to be ASAP, going to be going down, in the next month or so. If it were to happen, the Bradon Ingram discussions to be brought up. I think the Pelicans are going to go into next season with the DeJounte Murray, Trey Murphy, the Herb Jones, the Bradon Ingram, Zion Williamson, that led team, and then see how it goes. And if they're still in the middle of the pack of that loaded Western Conference, they're probably not going to want to pay Bradon Ingram a max contract to sort of move stuff along those lines. The Raptors are probably in a similar boat. Might try to buy low on the former All-Star for the New Orleans Pelicans. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below about all this sort of news. You guys are best to make this far. Subscribe to the channel if you guys haven't already. Anyways, I'm signing out. Cheers.